The first welcome I'd like to make is to Ueli, to having travelled from Switzerland to visit us. He's at the end of his 10-day tour of New Zealand and Australia, and we're very lucky to have him here today for this day. And thank you to Ngeringa, to Erin and Janet for hosting us today and letting us wander all over the farm and having a look around. We are very lucky that Ueli is here today because in 3 weeks' time it is the centenary of the Biodynamic lectures. So it was 100 years in June 1924. So this is it. This is the moment that 100 years have gone by, and I'm really glad that there are so many people here to celebrate it, because it would have been very sad if this was the centenary celebration and there were only 6 people. It would not have said much about what has happened so far. So that's great that you could all be here and that we have this opportunity to share in this celebration together and to learn about biodynamics and the different ways that biodynamics can be done.
I married into Paramank and Nurrunjeri mob down here, so my partner is a continuing Hunter family bloodline, and the Hunter family are Paramank mob here in the Adelaide Hills that have held this space and cared for this land for a long, long time. So generations of this family have been connected to this area and shared knowledge. I've been fortunate enough to be able to gain some of that knowledge from an elder named Uncle Richard Hunter. I'd like to acknowledge the Hunter family for that knowledge being passed on and shared through me into the younger Hunter generation. There are more females than there are males in the Hunter family, so I'm a bit outnumbered, us guys. We're used to getting told off by the women all the time, anyways, aren't we, bros? Yep. If it's not my wife or his mother, it's my sister, and if it's not the sister, it's his sister, my daughter telling us off. So we're a bit used to that, but the women in the family are a very big, strong part of our culture. They're knowledge holders of the environment and the plants. They were the gatherers. The men were the hunters. So the men would track and hunt the animals and provide that meat and the bone and the sinew and the nail for that weaponry, whereas the women held a lot of knowledge about the plants, the seasons, when they would change, when the plants are available, where to find them, how to prepare them. And this was all taught through songs and dances and through stories. And that's why it was so important for our stories, our music and our dance to continue on, was to teach that younger generation and find their connection to the country. So I'd like to acknowledge that we are gathered on Paramank country, and I'm visiting from a neighbouring group. I now call this place home, and I'm linked here through my partner and kids. I also have with me the Ueli. The Ueli is not traditionally from this area of country. It originates in the top end of the Northern Territory up in Arnhem Land. So I'd like to acknowledge the Yolngu people also, because the Ueli has found its way through trade over many generations, over many years, through into other neighbouring groups, and now around the world as a musical instrument. So I'd also like to acknowledge too, being the space that we're in on Paramank country is not far from here is Wamumurkurta, which is a trade site, the Mount Barker summit. It was a site where men would meet and gather up at the top, and from that top point you could see out as far as Stirling, as far as Monado, and out as far as Clayton Bay, and you'd see your neighbouring mobs coming and approaching for that trade. The implements that were traded through this area of country was quartz, pyrite. There was also the yucca resin from the yucca plant, and ochre. The Paramank people were known as the ochre warriors and the fire people because of the pyrite for the fire making stone that was traded, and also the ochre that was being traded with their neighbouring groups. I'd just like to acknowledge those groups as well. You had the Kaurna on the Adelaide Plains that would come and meet. You also had the Ngudjeri out to the north, out to Tanunda, the Ngungaraku and Narkat out near Manam areas along the river, then the Nurrunjeri from Monado out to the Murray River to the Coorong, and then from across the Coorong out into Victor area was the Ramangeri. So all these neighbouring groups and Paramank being in the middle, and that's why that trade would happen in this space. And it was a very much a centre point, but a place for travel from all the different mobs coming to meet and trade and have ceremony. So I'd like to now just introduce my son Kyle. He is a traditional Paramank custodian, and I'd like to introduce him and have him share a few words with you and welcome you here and explain what he's doing here.
G'day everyone, my name is Kyle Sampson Booth. I'm a direct bloodline descendant of the Paramank people, whose traditional lands are primarily located here in the Adelaide Hills. This land stretches as far down as the Fleurieu Peninsula, Tanunda and Mannum areas. Paramank are at the centre point of trade between neighbouring groups. I'd like to acknowledge those groups: the Ngarrindjeri, the Kaurna, the Ngunguraku and the Ngākat people. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past, present, future, young emerging representatives and leaders of culture. I'd like to welcome you here today as we are gathered on Paramank water. Now, just before I commence the smoking ceremony, I'd like to explain the significance. The smoking ceremony has been done for thousands of years by Aboriginal people. It's to not only cleanse ourselves but the land of any bad, negative energy that we may bring, and let the ancestors know we are gathered. Thank you.
So wherever Aboriginal people meet, it's a traditional custodian of that country, a bloodline descendant that will be welcoming you here to country. That's why Kyle is doing this welcome ceremony with you. The smoking ceremony, what we've done is we've collected plants, native plants from the local area. So what's been used by Paramank people in this area and the Kaurna and Ngarrindjeri is blue bush. So what we've got in the coolman there is some blue bush. Now, we want that smoke to drift out over you. We want you to welcome it and embrace it into you. This is going to go over your body and cleanse you from any negative energy that's in this space. But it's also going to cleanse you and cleanse the land and let ancestors know that you're here in this space. We're all gathered together as one mob, one people today, and we're sharing stories, sharing knowledge with each other. So don't be shy. As Kyle's moving around, follow him. Get into that smoke. Get closer to it. This will also make you connect with country, because country recognises this smell. Fire's been around for thousands of years looking after this country, burning off sections of it, so that when that rain would come, it would start to regenerate. So this smoke, smell, having it over you, connects you with the land and the environment. And traditionally when men were hunting, they would have a big fire, big smoking ceremony before they go out hunting, not only to cleanse themselves and to connect with the land, but it also stopped that smell, their BO, so the animals. They were smelling like the land. They were a part of that land. Thank you all for gathering here in this space. to Simon and to Joanne for organising for us to come and share with you guys and welcome you here and invite you here onto country and offer you that safe passage through. Like I said before, it was a special place, and a lot of this area of country that we're standing on now was where these neighbouring groups would come to meet and compete, battle, trade, have ceremony. So it's a very special place, and it's a great spot to have a gathering, particularly about, you know, living in this country sustainably. So thank you all very much. Hope you have a good rest of the day, and might see you mob around the trap somewhere.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seek the truly practical, material life, but seek it so that it does not numb you to the spirit which is active in it. Seek the spirit, but seek it not in passion for the supersensible, out of the supersensible egoism, but seek it because you want to apply it selflessly in practical life, in the practical world. Turn to the ancient principle. Matter is never without spirit, and spirit is never without matter, in such a way that you say, we will so do all material things in the light of the spirit, and we will so to seek the light of the spirit, that it evokes warmth for us in our practical activities.
Ueli, please.
Yeah, from my side, I feel blessed and honored, and I feel gratitude that I can be here on this field day and bring the greetings from the worldwide biodynamic movement and also anthroposophical movement and society. And what we just do together on a farm, this has been the starting point 100 years before. Because this birth moment of what we call nowadays biodynamics has been, to a certain extent, field days, already then on a farm. It has not been at the Goetheanum, it has not been in a city, it has not been in a university. It came about that this birth moment had to happen on a farm. It was an on-farm event. And I think it's deeply important that this new impulse, which I see really in a bigger, let's say, epochal evolution, which is not just for some years, it's not just something to make a little bit better agriculture, it's really, I would say, looking back to the 100 times 100 years, meaning the 10,000 years of agricultural evolution, I would say biodynamics is a kind of cornerstone and new step in this broader picture. And it happened on a farm. It has been Kobrowitz. It's a place. The time then in Germany, nowadays in Poland. And it has been a count named Kaiserling, and he had, let's say, the resources to invite these people. They have been a little bit more than we are here, but not much. 130 persons. And they crowded in a space. And Steiner was more or less in the middle and brought his lectures. And it has been a dialogue. They had to formulate their questions before. And he wasn't satisfied, and he said, some more. And then, as he has been overloaded with work, and he has been already an elderly people, 63 in age, and he has also been not healthy, So it was really a kind of adventure for him to go there and to take the train down in Dornach station and to travel 1,300 kilometers to this place. So compared to this, my displacement from Europe to here is nothing compared to this when we think back to these days. But important was that it happens on a ground where agriculture is done. And the expectations has been high, and yeah, what happened to these people? What happened to the first generation farmers, estate holders, gardeners, in this interaction, in this dialogue with Steiner? And just when you go to the book, actually, as you can have it, and you go to the first of the lectures, you find there a drawing. And the drawing is a huge circle, and in the center of this huge circle is a smaller circle. And this smaller circle is Earth. And the huge circle around is the orbit of Saturn. And you see he zoomed out. He took a look from the cosmic perspective and saying, in order that we can grow food which is healthy, in order that we can and live in our soils, in order that we can build up real living farms, we need to widen our perspective. We need really to go, let's say, to the sources of life, and the sources of life are not in the microscopical way to look to bacteria. They are in the overall life of the earth as a living being, and she belongs to the sun and all what is around. So it has been astonishing for these people, and it went on like this. And you know, then came second and third lecture, and then only in the fourth and fifth one he came about with the preparations, and they, frankly spoken, are still astonishing, no? And then it went on with the 6, 7, and 8 lectures. So it has not been the culmination at the end of preparation, it has been just in the going on of his talks, and they are not announced as something now, wow, now it came. They are in a very, let's say, kind way just giving it. So it means also as, yeah, they are part of a whole, and when this happened these days there, the farmers, they said, wow, what we got here, we should create a vessel in order to be capable to hold it. And they gathered in order to found the first Biodynamic Association. And the name has not been Biodynamic, it came later on, it's not from Steiner either. And it has not been an association, they called it Experimental Circle. That's why it is. All has already been said by Steiner. Why an experimental circle? And you see, right from the first moment on, they had perhaps more a feeling than clear thoughts that what came here has to be experimented, has to be asked, has to be researched upon. This has been the underlying principles. This has been, let's say, the essentials in a very condensed form. But if now you go out in your fields, in your vineyards, in your orchards, in your stables, how to apply this, how to make it happen on the farm. So, therefore, experimental circle from the first moment on. And the normal and now since 100 years carried on format of experimental circles are field days. This is our way to be a learning movement, to be an experimental movement, to be an open-minded movement. So that the gift we received from Rudolf Steiner, it's not there just given and forever. It's therefore to be worked on. It's therefore to be researched on. And in this way, we are looking back to 100 years of movement, which has always had this attitude for research and for sharing. And a field day like the one today is in this, let's say, tradition. And therefore, yeah, I feel really comfortable and blessed and happy that we can share this together. And I will just bring you something from Europe in a way that, yeah, we can, let's say, represent in the best way ever also biodynamics, of course, among us, but also towards the public. And when we do the research as we do it on the farm, on-farm research, it means we are active, we work, we produce, and in the same time we try to observe ourselves, what happens with our plants, how the soil becomes better or not, how our herd of animals, how they evolve. Yeah? So it's an ongoing way to be fully engaged and in the same time then to look back at the end of the season or look back at the end of the day and to say what happened. Yeah? This is the modern, let's say, way to be human, yeah? To fully engage and to say in the same time be itself observer. And this, to a certain extent, as practitioners, nobody else could tell us how to do than we self. It's a practitioner's movement. It's a movement which has a kind of imprint that the one who does is sovereign. A kind of sovereignty for the farmer, which is base of his dignity. And this is what is under threat today, the dignity of the farmer. He is just a doer, just an applier of recipes, and this doesn't work. And then, in later years, there has also been scientists looking to biodynamics, and this is the next step. Let's be farmers and gardeners and whatever, but let's also be, let's say, scientists and researchers in a professional way. And there has been a situation in the 70s in Switzerland where a deputy in the parliament, he raised his hand and he said, you, the government, you do an agricultural policy and you do it for conventional agriculture, but are you sure that this is the best way to farm? We have two other systems. We have the organic and the dynamic. And we should, as a parliament, do the base for that this can be researched upon with scientific tools in order that we know if the money we spend as a Swiss federation to our farmers, to our agricultural policy, it's the best way we can do. And this then went through, and it came about that a trial, a long-term trial, and the name is DOC. D is for dynamic, O is for organic, and C is for conventional. So the three system has been designed between the scientists and the farmers in order that they are more or less how the practical applying of these three systems is. And they found a field and they designed the blocks. And this is what we call this DOC trial. And it has been carried on now for 45 years. Imagine, 45 years. This is Swiss study. Yeah? It's like the Swiss franc. And this is the way we do. Yeah? Once we start something, we keep on. Yeah? but it's hard us to go to new horizons. And now we have the results after the 45 years, and they are highly, let's say, as scientific results. In 2002, in these days, they have been published in Science, in the journal Science, which is the highest ranked scientific journal. And well, there has been then some waves around, because should not be what is, because the results show that all parameters which go for soil fertility, they are showing very good results for dynamic. So it's scientifically proven that what has been, let's say, the first goal in the agricultural course to enhance soil fertility, because this is the base for healthy plants, for healthy foods, for healthy diet, that this really can be achieved with dynamic management. And many other results are in here, and I brought you a copy for you, the Australians, and in this way you can have them. And yeah, what I would like to bring with this is, let's be open, let's, even it's not our language as practitioners, let's be open also to speak languages as the scientific one, and let's be in this way confident that what we do biodynamically on our land, in our vineyards and in our stables, that this is a way to do which can be asked, which can be, let's say, entitled as hocus pocus, yeah, because not easy to understand, not to understand in a pure logic scientific way, but with our going around, having field days and encouraging among us and inspirational examples which you can see, we did also the work in the scientific community. We had these people, they carried it out. It has been financed by the Swiss government. And it's important that we know about, and in this way we feel kind of grounded also by this kind of work, that when we gather we have a base, and then we are inspired again after a day like this, go out and we can bring, let's say, this biodynamic impulse also to the wider society. Thank you.
I've been thinking over the last few days about how this talk might happen, to condense what feels like this enormous cosmic picture into today. And I thought, does this story begin because lives and things, biographies, human lives, and events intertwine mysteriously? Does this story begin when I was born into a family with a profoundly disabled child? Does this story begin when I went to Emerson and was an apprentice on Tablehurst Farm with Catherine Castellas, a fearsome Swiss woman who terrified the life out of me and taught me a great deal? Does this story begin with Herbert Kirk at Emerson College, who led an agricultural course in biodynamics, which inspired me immensely and consolidated a kind of feeling for land and love of land and nature that had lived in me all my life? Does this story begin in 1975 when we returned to Australia to begin farming biodynamically in Victoria, thanks to Robert Williams, who connected us with a biodynamic farmer? Does it begin when we moved to South Australia because Paul Rubens and Patricia Force and Dawn Lagman had all had connections with us at Emerson and asked us, would we come to help begin a Waldorf school here? Can you see these amazing threads that intertwine, that are completely mysterious to me? but somehow or other, in this big picture, begin getting smaller and smaller until the afternoon, a Sunday afternoon, when John and I were relief milking a dairy herd at Woodside with children everywhere, little children. And Paul Rubens brought Uta and Yokopayu to meet us. We were living in a 4-room cottage on a share farm. We were growing biodynamic whitlock and marketing it, and carrots and sweet corn. Life was full. And people visiting for afternoon tea was a challenge. We spent the afternoon with Uta and Yokut, just visiting. We went off to milk, they went home, and the next day they came back and said, we would like to give you being John Simpson, myself, Libby Turner, and Ernst de Jong, because we've been meeting together for a year, thinking about some kind of social impulse that we might do, which included agriculture, to work with young adolescents as a kind of bridge between leaving school and entering employment. We would like to give you $250,000, no strings attached, to found some kind of biodynamic social therapy venture. When I told people that people had visited us for one afternoon and offered us $250,000, they said, you're dreaming. Don't believe it. Whatever you do, it's a scam. They didn't use that word, but they would have with it now. But I knew it wasn't. And life went on, and we remained in close contact, and we bought this land in 1981. We rescued it from a land mining operation, which was going to take all of the topsoil off the place to rescue the man who had owned it, who was bankrupt. That feels like part of the story. We bought the land, we built a house. We began to imagine Ngeringa. And in 1982, I lay with my final child, naming him and Ngeringa at the same time, in the middle of July, hoping I got the names the right way around. And I really mean that, because it felt like a huge responsibility to take a name and lend it to the land. We opened the doors of Ngeringa in our house, the house that Erin and Janet now live in. The front room would be our house during the night. We'd pack the kids up. 2 of them were still part of Ngeringa at that point, and clear everything away, and that was our classroom, craft room, everything room, as we built with the young disabled people the building that housed us for the next 10 years or so, out of mud bricks, which we made. This is really, for me, a story of mystery and karma, and the threads of people who come together that I feel like I stand on the shoulders of, and that anyone who's come after us stand on the shoulders of, as we sit here today. We farmed the land biodynamically. We grew Ngeringa so that we had houses in the community. We had a day program here on the farm that was rich and productive. We had a wonderful community of people, both here during the day and their families, who supported us and loved us into being. And I'm just going to backtrack for a moment to really bring another element of mystery into this. In, I think, about the middle of 1982, Jürgen Klein visited South Australia and came to Ngeringa. And we were, in our usual, many children, lots to do, chaos. But he was very touched by something that he experienced here. And when he brought his family a little later to live here in South Australia, Ulrika and I, because we had children, Jonas and Barnaby were the same age, we had children similar ages, and we played in the sandpit with them together. So it seemed kind of weirdly fitting when Ngeringa needed to be sold in 1994 that Jürgen and Ulrika bought it. How amazing is that? Another thread of mystery. And their work continued here to growing plants for Ueli until it became the home for Eukarya. Many of the trees on this property we planted. When we came, there was a row of gums at the bottom of the hill along the road, along Williams Road, and a row of cypress. And that was about it. And when you look around you here today at all the trees that have been grown, some of which were planted in 1982 and some of which have been planted successively year after year by many people since then, you can also feel an immense sense of gratitude that this land has brought to it healing through people who cared about it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nola. That was really wonderful. So the next person to speak is Deb Cantrell, and she will speak about another part of the history of this property. So I'll let you
Thanks, well, my part of the story is about the Biodynamic group in the Adelaide Hills. And back in the late 1980s, then a group of people, some of them are here today, decided they would study the biodynamic preparations and make them. And they so formed a group. And we had a study group, and we met here at Ngeringa. And the very first group preparation making day was held here. Sorry, was held here at Ngeringa under the stewardship of Terry Foreman, where we made all the preparations. And from then on, this was the headquarters of the Adelaide Hills Biodynamic Group for a long, long time. And we did have study groups in other places, but mostly we came here until Simon decided to go overseas, and he brought all the equipment and preparation making stuff to my place, where it has lived ever since. And so then I became the caretaker of the Adelaide Hills Biodynamic Group. And we continued the work with field days and workshops, and we made the preparations and distributed them throughout South Australia. Most of our members were home gardeners and small farmers, small scale farmers, not short like me. And so it became quite a place to actually come and make those preparations. And for us on our farm, it was just part of it. It was just what we did. And like everything, things have to come to an end. Well, a new beginning, really. And so now our preparation making and all our workshops and preparation distribution has all moved to Flat Sweet, where it's actually will be continued and start a new beginning of likely people, hopefully some younger than men to carry on the legacy of the Adelaide Hills Biodynamic Group.
Thanks, Simon, and lovely to see you all here today. Many faces are familiar, so it's great to see you here, and new people as well to me. So, I'm chair of Biodynamic Agriculture Australia. It's based in Ballingen in New South Wales. It's had a long history there, and we make and distribute preps from that location, and we also provide an educational role and provide people can ring in and get information and advice.
And so we're looking at 100 years, and in one of Ueli's presentations he spoke of the fact that 100 years we need to start to stand up and speak out. Yeah, and when I met Simon at the airport yesterday, there was this delightful little toddler, 1 year old, yeah, just enjoying her newfound levity, running this way and running that way, yeah, and so 100 years in a sort of culture is sort of mirrored in 1 year of a child, and so a 1-year-old child is starting to speak and starting to walk, and in a way that can be an image for where we're up to. Yeah? And so what I'd like to do is I went through and had a look at what's been going on and when. And so if we actually have a look, Kovovich was 1924. The first biodynamic farm in Australia was Ernesto Zanoni. And he started a farm in the Dandenong Ranges outside Melbourne in 1935. Yeah. Now, I never met Ernesto, but one of the things that stands out in my biography, the people that I've met who actually spent time with Rudolf Steiner, they were very different people. They had an inner will, an inner fire, an inner glow, and an inner sort of quietude. Yeah? There were, Marjorie Spock in America, Ruth Ainsworth, those people were very special. So I can only imagine Ernesto, who spent time in Dornoch with Steiner, must have been one of those, and his partner was Eileen McPherson, some of you might know her name. So then Bob Williams gave his first talk in 1938. Alex Podolinski formed the Biodynamic Association, Agricultural Association in 1953. The Henry Doubleday was the only other sort of organic organisation at the time. And when I came on board in 1972, basically that was it. Alex and the Henry Doubleday were the only game in town in this space that you're all engaged in. Yeah? And also second was 1977. NASA, which is the certification body, that came into being in 1986. BD TAS, Biological Farmers of Australia, and Gavin Dunn and people who were connected with that, they were both 1988. The BFA, the BAA was 1989. Biodynamic Far North Queensland, 1989. The Biodynamic Adelaide Hills, sorry I had to squeeze that in, 1990. The BD Association group in West Australia was 1994. They closed down in 2002. Biodynamics 2024 started in 2009, and that was my sort of initiative. And the thing about the 2024, for the last 40, 45 years, I've been anticipating the times we're in, and the whole biodynamic work that I've been involved in is actually being ready for this year in a certain sense. And to give you a picture of what I see happening, 5 years ago, when people around a biodynamic farm or passing a biodynamic farm during a dry period would see this green farm, and say, oh, they must have had a shower rain that I didn't get. Yeah? That was the general response to difference. I did a workshop in Bairnsdale last week, and it's changed. Yeah? The people are looking over the fence and saying, why is your farm green and not mine? Yeah? This is the change I've been expecting, the 100-year, the 1-year-old, and we've got, our whole task in my view is we've got to be ready for when the tsunami of change hits. Yeah? We've got to have the skill base all around the countryside. And all I can say, I'm really excited because that's happening. Yeah? So no matter how bad the world looks, I get excited when I see the people who are coming to events like this. Yeah, so thank you for that. BD Vic started in 2010. Now, these numbers, the red numbers, are the age they are. And I was very pleased to hear that Ueli came into the whole biodynamic movement when he was 35. Yeah? So you can see how much progress can be made by a 35-year-old joining this movement. Yeah? So this is the age of all these entities. If you take the BDAA, that's actually 71 years old at this point. And when we get to 72, that's when our star and our sun, we start to become a bit more star and a little bit less sun, or the other way around. Yeah. So we have to recognise that these guys are even older. They're moving into getting ready for greater futures. But most of us, most of these activities are around 34, 35, 36, 37, 38. That's when we move from a moon phase to a Mercury phase. Yeah? In a way, this is very crudely put, but in a way from fertility to healing. Yeah? And also, we start to go through a second moon node. Again, a time of change. So I find it pretty exciting that in this year, we have these organisations that in a way are ripe for another step. Yeah? A new step into the future. Yeah? And they all have to make those freely decided and freely taken, but the dynamic of it is exciting in my view. And in a way, most exciting, with Ueli coming here on the 100 years, the group that's organised this, Simon and Mark and Paul and Diane, who's the guy himself in Tasmania? Trevor. Anyway, this is a group of people who've never worked together before. Yeah? They're not one of the old groups bringing something forward. This is a totally new initiative. Yeah? And that, to me, is also really exciting. Yeah? So that's just an image for me of, if you look at how old all these different groups are, Biodynamics 2024, that's a bit of a challenging year for me because not only is it 15 years old, it's time to sort of change. Yeah? And so I haven't worked out how that'll be yet. But
Well, you can always 34.
So if I can just say one more quick thing. I put Sechem in here because we've heard a bit about Sechem. But Sechem, Ueli was saying this morning, there's over 2,000 people involved there. There's farms, there's college, there's research, there's marketing. Yeah, the wealth that's been generated there out of Rudolf Steiner's gifts, his ideas, his culture, the wealth that's been developed there has been poured back into that activity, and it flourishes. Yeah? My observation in my 52 years of being involved with the Biodynamic Association, Biodynamic work in Australia, we've generated just as much wealth. We've stimulated well over 2,000 people. So it's a real question, what have we done with our wealth? Yeah? So that's a question we can ponder as we pick up on this initiative that Ueli is bringing. Thank you.
We rotate the crops. We have, I think at last count, close to 100 different crops and varieties over the year. So we grow everything from root vegetables, summer crops, tomato, eggplants, zucchinis, cucumbers, lots of brassicas, as you can see, potatoes, you name it, we grow it. Fennel.
Biodynamic approach to rabbits. All these vegetables look totally vulnerable to rabbits.
Lead.
We've got them running around.
I have a friend that's a very good shot, so he. Had we? No, I think it'll involve heavy mulching, and when a crop is done, mulch over the top again. Yeah, you're thinking of crimping brim in your crops. Yeah. So we rested a section towards the bottom of this field and at the bottom of the beds there, and we crimped those over, which was fairly successful at the time, but the season we've had has caused some other weed problems since.
What's your water source there? The veggies take a fair bit of water.
A lot of water, and we've never watered this late in the season. At the moment, I think we're watering 10-15 minutes almost every second day. So we have relatively good groundwater. So we use bore water. Yeah. Any other specific questions?
How do you manage your interrows? Is that a bit of couch growing in there?
Yeah, it's a creeping grass. It's a problem. And it's a big topic of discussion at the moment because it keeps creeping into the beds. For the crops and then to manage that attempting to manage that with without the rotary hoe and moving the soil is going to be truly difficult. Alright, are we ready? Just checking no one's been in vineyards in Victoria recently. If so, please stay on the road because we do not. I should have managed that earlier. It'll be too late. So we're looking at Mount Barker Summit over there. We call it our Summit Vineyard for obvious reasons. We're at about 380 meters altitude. So it's a really interesting microclimate here. So by the altitude, it brings us into a kind of continental climate, but can't see it today because it's not clear enough, but that's Lake Alexandrina down there. So we do have a direct line of sight to Lake Alexandrina, and then just behind there is the Coorong and the Southern Ocean. So we have this distinct cooling influence on our hotter days, unless we have a really strong northerly wind, which will push the sea breeze back. But more often than not, we have this beautiful cooling influence on the hotter days. So that allows us to grow grapes with nice acidity, freshness, and
Aaron.
yeah. All right, everyone look up. How was that?
Here's one appreciate it.
There's no lambs on the ground yet, so so varieties we grow Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and then Shiraz on the other side of the road, and then we have a lot of little bits and pieces. Like I said before, the vineyard is relatively low input, and something that we, and I think most biodynamic farmers, strive towards is really to close that circle and not be reliant on external inputs for fertility. So we work with the horn manure, the BD 500, somewhere between 2 and 4 times a year. We try it twice in autumn, twice in spring. We don't always achieve that. 501 is something we work with in the wetter parts, and also most years we put a 501 out before harvest. It's tricky timing because everything is bird netted. Unfortunately, we haven't got our biodiversity to a point where we don't need to net. If we didn't net, we would barely harvest the grape. We can keep the wedge-tailed eagles on hand. So that's the other. If you can have predatory birds, that would be amazing.
In between each row.
Janet, do you want to talk? So, vineyard, we do cultivate under vine, and something we have played with in more recent times is interplanting some natural species in and also around the vineyard. We started around the vineyard much earlier, but maybe I'll get Janet to talk about the re-veg and what we do on that side of the farm.
Thank you. I suppose we're just, as farmers, really conscious about the distinction between food production and in this native environment, and how historically in our European way of viewing the Australian landscape, we've removed a good portion of our native biodiversity. And so since we moved here, we've just tried to reduce that gap. We're learning all the time. We have definitely not done it perfectly. I suppose the Mount Barker Summit is a bit of our role model, even though it too needs a lot of care. So we've tried revegetating, as you can see, with medium and upper story, being somewhat limited in not being able to use herbicide to compete paddock grasses in the first instance. But in the last few years, we've started toying with native grasses in the vineyard, because that's a much more controlled environment for us, with actually a lot of success. And so we're trying to reintroduce native grasses back into some of our paddocks, and also have set aside a good portion of the property to removed from grazing, and so you can see some lovely regeneration of different ground covers, both grasses and flowering species. But there's a long, long way to go. There's a lot of interest in this actually out in the wine industry as well as the broader community, as restoration, regeneration, revegetation is probably not even the best word any longer, and in the agricultural sector, regenerative farming. So learning together and being a community, working with science too, is really critical.
Can you also speak about the group biodiversity?
Yeah. One part of what we've done actually is very gratefully have had community support us, and there are some community members here who've put hours of their time into growing plants, which all we've done is found a patch of soil to put them in. Hills Biodiversity was founded by a group of community members as a way of trying to connect members of the broader community who don't have access to land and want to be part of the restoration solution, with landholders equally who have land and may not have time, resources, or necessarily the know-how as to how to do it. So Hills Biodiversity is just a local not-for-profit which connects both landholders and community to put back local native species for biodiversity and community.
And the project from Summit to...
Thank you, you kept prompting me. So we have sprung up like a native plant likes to spring up if there are fewer pressures. But one of our projects, purely because of the opportunity to work from Ngeringa as a seed, the fact you can look around this landscape, there's so much work to be done from a regenerative perspective. We've got the beautiful Mount Barker Springs creek line, also needing a lot of attention, and we have some local landholders who were just really open to revegetating, for want of a better word, and we have a little project. Hopefully it's not little, it will make a mark on the local landscape called Springs to Summit. So we're really conscious of that tiny little patch of remnant scrub being so valuable to native species, woodland birds particularly. For example, there are diamond firetail finches we know have been sighted just on the other side of the summit, or on the summit, but on the side that we're not looking at. They're not here at Ngeringa, so it can't be that hard. And creating a corridor from the summit to Laratinga, for example, could be a way to provide missing habitat. Equally, there's some lovely, work being done in some remnant scrub at Crafers West, which is beautiful remnant but filled with weeds, and that's very successful. And there's a lovely community group guided by Hills Biodiversity, I shouldn't say guided, supported by Hills Biodiversity working there as well. So we're open to all patches of our local landscape and to support hubs, I suppose, of community members who might be interested. So feel free to create your own.
Erin, because you go grapes and it's a wet climate, how do you get on with it, like things like downy and powdery?
I wish it was a wet climate. So,
normally.
Yeah, I mean, I actually feel kind of embarrassed to bring people here. Like, I think this is almost the worst the farmers looked. Normally we do have a lot more greenery, and but to answer your question, we have in the past, when we had a good source of milkway, used a lot of milkway, predominantly milkway for managing powdery mildew. Thank you, Ueli. That is no longer available to us, so we use predominantly copper and sulfur. And on occasion, we will also make a tea out of the she oak and spray that. So we will put that in usually with a copper and sulfur spray. I think it would be nicer to do it separately, but for us to do a full pass spraying the vineyard it's a full day or two. So yeah, and that's kind of something we're looking at doing more of, is playing with compost tea as well, to really build the microbial life on the foliage. So we've had our first really difficult wet season was 2011. So we planted in 2001, went through a fairly dry spell, and 2011 was really wet. It was so challenging. People that spray all the chemicals under the sun still had problems, and we actually fared very well. We had lower yields, we weren't greedy, we thinned our crops, but we had very little botrytis. Some varieties were very heavily downy affected, and the seasons since then we've fared a lot better, because as everyone knows, in this game without chemicals, prevention is it's not only better than the cure, because we don't have those cures. It's if you don't prevent the mildew from growing, it's impossible to catch up.
Erin mentioned birds and predators. Just reminds me that Ian Lloyd out at Naya West near Swan Hill, he used to have white doves. He had a dovecot of white doves, and they used to keep the starlings away. So just something bit of interest.
Another potential project. Yeah, I think where is he? I think whistling kites actively encourage birds of prey to circle their vineyard up near Loxton. So does that do you want?
They don't need a lot of encouragement really. A few necks down on the perch near the river flat, and that's it. We've got probably 2 pairs that nest down there.
Whistling kites, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they've been nesting down on property for ever. Yeah.
We have a pair of wedge-tailed eagles, but I think they cover a much bigger area. That pretty sure they nest at Blackiston, which is 5 kilometres in that direction. But we see them quite commonly. Black-shouldered kites. Yeah. Something we've also done in the last, I think, 4 years, wherever we have a vine missing, so under vine cultivation, occasionally you do take a plant out. So we haven't replanted those plants. We've actually replanted them with either tea tree or Christmas bush, botanical names. So and that's to encourage predatory insects, which will then predate on our main pest, which is light brown apple moth.
What have you planted along there?
So it's tea tree along the headland, and this year we've watered them many times, but they're really struggling up here.
What was your main site?
Light brown apple moth. We have a few European wasps.
Maybe a little bit off topic, but I'm just interested in the way that you grow your vine. Can you talk a little bit about the fruit? It doesn't look very, what I would say is conventional, say, wine growers.
So nearly all our vineyard now is cane pruned, and for the last 8 years we learnt about and I think it's an ancient method of pruning. So you prune with the sap flow, so you make cuts only on one. This is very simplified, on one side of the vine, so the sap is uninterrupted. So wherever you make a cut, there's a dieback, especially older wood. There's dieback that dies back into the vine, and over time allows fungus to get in and potentially kill your vines. So dead arm or Utapa is very common and starts to rear its head in vineyards, generally 10 years or older, and particularly in certain varieties. So we cane prune. I think there's a few vines further in the Sangiovese actually is the only variety that seems to do better with spur pruning. But the other beauty with cane pruning is if you have the vine vigor is in balance, you can really position your shoots we use the fist as a spacer. Really important part of managing our mildew is to limit the density of leaves in the canopy. So pruning very important, and you do a green thinning. All done by hand. So under vine we have some the Braun undervine weeding equipment. I imported it for a little while, but realised I needed to focus on actually growing and making the wine and selling. But there are a few really good brands around now. So it's a knife that dodges just under the surface and cuts the grass. But the beauty with most of these systems, and I think it's about having a diversity of implements. So we have like a vertical brush cutter that cuts the grass. We have bigger discs, especially in our wider rows. We can be a little bit more aggressive. You can see here we've mounted, so we work with mounting and dismounting. And then a big part of our undervine management is the sheep. So we've over the last 2 or 3 years we used to just run them in the whole vineyard, which is a little bit tricky with the road going through the vineyard, but we've actually found that strip grazing is much more effective. So currently we had about 140 sheep. I think I'm down to 100 and just over 100. And yeah, we split the sheep. I think we've got 40 in the vineyard here for our breeders, and then we've got 40 younger ones in the other vineyard, and the other ones I'm trying to sell because I don't have enough feed. But they're like nearly all our vineyard now is cane pruned, and for the last 8 years we learnt about and I think it's an ancient method of pruning. So you prune with the sap flow, so you make cuts only on one. This is very simplified, on one side of the vine. So the sap is uninterrupted. So wherever you make a cut, there's a dieback, especially older wood. There's dieback that dies back into the vine, and over time allows fungus to get in and potentially kill your vines. So dead arm or Utapa is very common and starts to rear its head in vineyards, generally 10 years or older, and particularly in certain varieties. So we cane prune. I think there's a few vines further in the Sangiovese actually is the only variety that seems to do better with spur pruning.
If I could bring a little bit something about biodynamic preparations, I will try. As I have 10 to 15 minutes, it will be very short. And what is more known from the preparations is the herbs and what we fill in the horns. But I would like to make a kind of approach where we see that the bringing together from the herbs or the ingredients and the sheets of the animals we take, that this is kind of key for the preparations. Because to a certain extent, we combine what we have of the given kingdoms of nature, as it is the minerals, the plants and the animals, and I would say the seasons. We take out of these different given layers of the creation and combine them in a new way, and in this way we are really co-creators, I would say, of substances which are done pure from natural sourcing, that never they would exist if we wouldn't do them. Yeah, so it's pure human creation. Yeah, and this is the speciality. And the herbs, they exist in nature, but the herbs then put into a sheet of a cow or something, and then buried into wintertime and taken up. This is new. And so I would say, if we try to enter into the shoes of Rudolf Steiner when he invented the preparations, and I would say there are inventions. And there is not much of explications. It's more a kind of indication. Take, do, and you will see it works. Yeah. And this is not often with Rudolf Steiner. So I think he really has been capable in these days before and in Koblenz to touch on a point which goes deep, deep, deep in our, let's say, responsibility as humans to transform the planet. Yeah. We have to protect and to respect what is given by nature and by the indigenous people, but then we have also the task to transform the given substances in a kind of new level of life. And we have the two preparations with horns. So we need horns of female cows, and not of bulls. And there we can take a day to speak about, but perhaps one can just feel what the bull, as this very, let's say, powerful, strong representative. The bull is the most powerful, let's say, animal. This is inversed with the cow. All this power which comes out when the bull fights, when you take this quality, but now it's an inward quality, this is what the cow, as female cow, what she carries. And she is a ruminant, the bull also, but the bovines, they are ruminants. And when you look in the evolution of the animals, there are only animals which has horns which are ruminants. It goes together. So what happens inside these animals and what appears on the head of these animals, this is the expression of the same. Okay? And not all ruminants have horns, but there are no horn-keeping animals which would not be ruminants. And this, when you go in the physiology and in the anatomy of the cow and in the evolution position she has, it becomes clear. But now we do a shortcut. And what happens then in the horn when the cow lays down and she does this ruminating activity? Have you observed this? Have you counted how many times she does? 50, 55, 60. Try on the dinner. You will not achieve. You will not achieve. After 6 times, you will achieve. Wow. Yeah? So it's an intensity, and then it goes on with the next steps of digestion. It means that he takes in a huge amount of roughage, of grass, lays down, and takes it again up, and makes this kind of rumination activity. And then, when you look to the cow, she is kind of meditation, inward, very awakened, but not towards you, looking to her. She is kind of very awakened to sense what has the ear, let's say, brought in the grass. She is all this taken out. Rudolf Steiner gives the term of a qualitative cosmic analyst that she is. A cosmic qualitative analyst. Try once. Not so easy. But she can. And then this intense, let's say, inward awakening situation she has when she ruminates, this is freeing up, let's say, what is in the fodder, what is in the roughage. It means the etheric and astral forces. and they can't go out her metabolism because they go with the gases until in the horns, and the horns are the opposite as from antenna. What is this? Antenna. Antenna. It's the opposite from antenna. They are completely closed, and all these forces go again to her stomach and work again through this mass she has in her stomach. And it means when it comes out at the end as a dung, as a manure, it's completely transformed. What has been plant substance is now completely, let's say, worked through with the essence of her being. Yeah? And therefore, this dung is so healthy for the soil. It's a gift from her to the soil because she renounces to be conscious of herself. We do. She not. And in this way, it's kind of even sacrificed substance from her to her ground where she lives on. And with this, we can close the cycle. And this is what we call the closed cycle of a farm organism. Huh? And we have heard now it's huge work to install it on a place. One is never at the end. And it's just a kind of endeavor one undertakes throughout 10, 20 or 30 years. And now when we have done this and we closed our circle and we are in a circular economy, this is the real model of circular economy for all other economy. So this will be in the second century of our striving. We will be, I guess, also kind of, let's say, prototypers for a new economy. But this would be another theme. And now, when we do so, and we say, okay, we don't need to buy inputs, no fertilizers, no chemicals, no GMO seeds. Yeah? This is our bio identity, the biodynamic. The bio means, yeah, with life and with, without chemicals, I would say. And then Steiner says, okay, when we do so, it's great, but on the long-term run, we need a new source for this life that it can go on and produce the food we need as modern people. We are so demanding that I would say only natural food on the long term is not enough. And it's not enough for our farm organism, and there comes in the term of farm individuality. Now we have to make a step. And individuality is a kind of being which evolves in itself, let's say, rhythms. Huh? We have already heard the term of karma before, and we have seen this biography of who has it been? No? Someone else told here the place? Yeah? Have you heard this? Yeah? This is this kind of language. Huh? So we have to create a new entrance, and this then are the preparations. And when we do the 500, we open up our closed organism to the depth of the earth. And when we do the silica preparation with the, which you have also the name 501, we open up to the cosmos. And this, what we have on the ground, which is the farm organism, is just the interpenetration of an absolutely open space which goes until the center of the earth, and a space which comes down, I would say, from the height of the cosmos. You see what seems to be, let's say, this closed thing, it's only a step, it's a tool, it's not the goal, it's something I have to achieve in order that now as a farm I can communicate with what's outside and bring the relation between the two. So I do a new, let's say, vertical power, a vertical, let's say, quality I awake in my farm operation. These are the two preparations which we stir and which we bring out, and we do with the horns. And then we have the 6 compost preparations. And they are more now for that what is my ground, what are my fields, what is my garden, that it interconnects more in a horizontal dimension with all what is around. That there is a kind of going to the Mount Paramount, going to the river down, it's interconnected in a horizontal way. This is what is opened, this dimension, with the compost preparation. And just to mention then, the first one is yarrow. We take the flowers, and then we need the bladder of a stag. And this time a male stag, which has a male, which has the anthers. And this is the opposite of the cow horn. These are antennas, and with this animal is always related with all which goes on. So I take the bladder, I do the flowers in, I hang this up in the sun, summertime, and I bury it in wintertime, and when I take it out, it's a special compost. What we create with this, it's kind of new earth, specialized new earth. And this is to give a kind of new juvenile forces. It's a kind of bringing together potassium and sulfur and makes that the fresh, let's say, forces, they are present on the farm. The second preparation is with chamomile and with the intestine of a cow. And this does the same on the farm as when we take an infusion of chamomile. It helps when it's disturbed. So it makes kind of harmonious situation when our plants grow. Then we have the third of the preparation, it's with stinning nettle. And there we don't have a sheet from an animal around, but we bury it not only in one season, but the whole year round. And the effect of this stinning nettle, when we do it in a compost, and the compost then comes to the fields or to the vineyards, is that the soil becomes reasonable. And you know, as farmers, as renters, as gardeners, when the soil becomes reasonable, we can go to holidays. Yeah? This is what we're striving for. That it happens as it shall happen. Then we have the fourth of the preparation. We take oak bark and we do it in a skull of a domestic animal, mostly also a cow. And it's buried on a special place. And this is a kind of preventive remedy against all kind of fungi diseases. Yeah? And then we have the fifth one, which is dandelion, and which is enveloped in the mesenterium, a little bit tricky to find it, and this helps with all what is the micro elements which are in the surrounding to bring them in our life process. And then we have the sixth one, which is with valeriana, and this is for the process of phosphorus helping in this way that the phosphorus is a catalyzer, helping in this way that we are running well, that it's smoothly going with our life processes in our operations. And with these 6 compost preparations, we bring them in the compost, and with the compost, we bring them to the land. And it's a kind of new, let's say, way to bring something to the land, and one could speak as a kind of new fertilizing method, that we don't bring, let's say, substances in with weight. What we do, I would say, it's more an education of our farm individuality. The ones of you who are teachers, when you have a young child and or all as we are parents, to educate means not to stuff in something, it means to awake what is already, let's say, in this new person that needs a kind of accompaniment, needs a kind of help that it can find itself. And this is, I would say, then also the effect of the preparations, and therefore, when we do this work with the preparations, and when we have then a crop where we taste it, but this is the case with wine, yeah, it finds this quality in the glass. It's the same for the carrots and for the wheat and for other, let's say, foods that we don't, not so much, we don't degustate them so much. But in this way, the preparations really, they are, I would say, key elements of the agricultural course in order to help us to build the farm individuality, really resilient, really going on throughout the years, and in the same time being producers of food, lime, food, fibers, and so on, which have a new degree of quality. Perhaps so far, thank you.